Hello gamers, my name is Spark, and today I'm going to show you an awesome one-of-a-kind tool that you can use at your D&D or other TTRPG table. In this video I'm going to show you a books, scrolls, and languages generator. This is a great tool for GMs, so if you're a player, forward this video onto your GM. Be advised, I built this generator specific to D&D 5e, but with just a little bit of tweaking, you can make it work for basically any TTRPG. Here's how this video is going to go. For starters, I'm going to show you the basics of how this tool works and how you can use it at your table. Then I'm going to show you what's happening behind the scenes that makes the generator work so that you can customize it to better fit your campaign. This is another one of those generators that I've created that is actually multiple generators in one. You can see on the screen we have three separate generators. We have a language generator on the left, a books generator, and a spell scrolls generator. Again, these are specific to D&D 5e. All of my generators are broken down into four main sections. We have the generate buttons, which we have three of, and these buttons turn the machine on and make it work. We have the settings sections, which is where you can tweak the results, and then you have your results section itself. You can also see that we have a storage system, and I will talk about that at the end of part one of this video. So why don't we start with the language generator. The language generator is about as simple as you can possibly imagine a random generator to be. We have a list of possible languages. These are from D&D 5e. By clicking the generate button, you get one result from any of the options that are ticked on. Thus, you can curate the available results that might occur just by checking any of these boxes. So if in your campaign there are no Minotaur or Loxodon, just untick those, and those languages will never pop up in the possible results at the bottom. But really, that's it. This generator is very simple. And how I use it at my table is if my players are going to a bookstore or they're raiding a tomb or something and they come across a book or a scroll, I might want to decide what language it's in. If this is an ancient tome from 800 years ago, it's probably not going to be written in the common tongue of the day. So what language is it written in? Well, I can just come to this generator and randomly select, with the click of a button, another language that tome could be written in. This is a great way to give your players whose characters have lots of different language skills more usefulness, because I think a lot of us veteran players have had characters that knew 5 languages and never used any of them. But that's all I'm going to say about the written language generator for now. Let's jump over to the book generator, but the functionality of the book generator will actually incorporate the language generator as well. So we'll come back to the language generator in a second. Okay, so with the book generator, there are 3 different types of books that you can possibly generate. There are fictional titles, there are rare tomes, and then there are spell books. So fictional titles are exactly what they sound like. They're just fun little fictional books that your players might come across. For the Critical Role fans, Season 2 Tusked Love would be an example of a fictional title. It doesn't have any spell components and it's not based off an ancient text from thousands of years ago. It's just, what might the bookstore have that somebody wrote? Rare tomes, however, are going to be much more interesting, and then of course your spell books are going to be books with a bunch of spells in them specific for wizards or anybody who can copy spells from sources into their own spellbook. Let's just start off easy with the fictional titles. The only setting in this section of settings that applies to the fictional titles is this last one, use language filter for author and title. That applies to the language generator that we were just looking at over on the left. And so this is how the two of them interact with each other. Whatever languages you have selected as possible languages over here in the written language generator, if this box is ticked saying use language filter for author and title, if this is ticked, then the fictional tome that is produced in the results will have its language and author based upon the settings that are over here in the language generator. Let's generate some and take a look. So if we click generate, you can see we have written in Giant a book that's called And Werewolves, written by Laryl. Why Giant? Well, Giant is ticked right here. That's why Giant came up. You'll notice the next one is written in Draconic. That is also another one that's ticked. But also notice that if I come in and turn them all off except for Common, they will always just be written in Common. So whatever settings you have over here will affect the titles and the authors over here. The way I would use this is at the beginning of your campaign, you come into the written languages generator and you tick on all the ones that you're going to use in your world. Do you have elves? Do you have dwarves? Do you have dragonborn? Etc. Tick on whichever ones you want and then probably just leave that where it is so that throughout the rest of the campaign, when you're generating tomes, fictional titles, or scrolls, it's already ready to go with the right types of languages that are available. That's really all there is to the fictional title generator. It just gives you a fun little book with an author and its language. Okay, so with that being said, let's take a look at our rare tomes. The settings section for the tome generator is just right here, these 4 boxes right here, these 4 white ones. The generator can produce either lesser tomes or greater tomes. Lesser tomes are going to have lesser effects and be less potent to the reader. Greater tomes will obviously have greater effects and be more potent. We'll look at examples of both of those. You notice that it says force lesser tome. If you tick that, then the tome produced will always be lesser. If you tick greater, then it'll always be greater. If you tick both, it'll be 50-50. And if you leave both unticked, then it will go off of a percentage system that's in the customization section on the second tab, which I will show you in the second half of this video. Now we also have 2 settings here for OBE. OBE stands for opening the book events. Now, by the way, you'll notice that we have these little black triangles in the corner of these cells. Any cell that has a little black triangle, if you hover your mouse over that cell, you will get a pop-up like you see on the screen now. And these pop-ups contain additional information that you might find really useful in the functionality of the generator. So I would advise you that when using the generator, take the time to learn what it is they're talking about. Now, OBE, right, open book events, is the idea that with this rare tome, when the player opens the book, something is going to happen. And you can turn that off if you don't want it. So if you want to turn off OBEs, just uncheck that. If you want it to be random, leave that checked, and then force OBE, leave off. So as the pop-up says, selecting this will force an OBE to be generated 100% of the time. If you leave that unchecked but allow OBEs, then there's a percentage chance that it will or won't have an OBE. What is the percentage chance for that? You can customize that percentage in the reference tab, which I will show you in the second half of this video. For the sake of demonstrating this, let's turn off OBEs and then I'll show you what they look like when they're on. Let's generate one here. So written in common, Zeroaz Scrolls. This book's cover is stained glass with black embossed lettering. The book is covered in an odd mucus. So this is a very simple description, and this one randomly generated not a lot of information. However, if we generate more, we'll see that there is some variety. Let's generate another one. Here's one that obviously has a lot more to it. So this one's written in Draconics, Screw-Oz Tablets of Aasimar and Tieflings. This book's cover is bound in brown leather with gold embossed lettering. The book is nigh unreadable. Reading this book grants a permanent immunity to petrification. So that's obviously a pretty big boon, but you have to earn it. This text requires 43 hours to complete, in sessions no less than 1 hour at a time. An ability check of DC 16 is required each session. After the text is complete, if the reader has more successes than failures, they gain the positive effects. If not, they sustain a curse of equivalent negative value. So you'll notice that there's a few areas in here that the DM is going to need to supply some information. For example, what is the ability check? I left that open to interpretation for the DM because I felt like each DM might feel like different ability checks would be appropriate based upon what the tome is trying to do. So if I were running this table and one of my players got this tome, the ability check that I would probably require is a Constitution save. Now that might seem a little weird that you're making Constitution saves while reading a text, but first off, it's a magical world and this is a magical book, so why not? Magic can do whatever you want it to do, that's why magic is cool. But secondly, if you want to get a little more hardcore on it, you can say that the book describes a series of physical practices or exercises or the integration of certain herbs and alchemical ingredients into the person's body to help them achieve this immunity to petrification. And therefore, because of these things that you're having to do, these exercises or these things that you have to consume or do to your body, Constitution saves are required. You can play that either way, but that's how I would play it. If you think differently, play it however you want, but that's why I left the ability check unspecific. You'll notice that this text says that you need 43 hours of reading to complete it, in sessions no less than 1 hour at a time. Those two numbers are random. You will have some books that require more time to complete, some books that require less time to complete. By the way, I'm pretty sure this is an example of a greater tome. This is a tome that is allowing for a permanent immunity. That would definitely be an example of a greater tome. A lesser tome probably would not grant permanent immunities to things. But you might have some tomes that require more or less hours to complete and more or less time per session. I believe 1 hour is the minimum, but I believe there are some tomes that require 4 hours at a time. If the player didn't spend 4 hours reading the text, then they don't get any progress, and they don't get to make their roll to determine a success or a failure. You can see how this generator, the tome that this generator has given you, introduces a fun new mechanic, something for your player to do during their downtime. And it comes with an inherent risk, because if they don't make enough passes, then they can get a curse. How would I play this curse in this particular situation? Well, the boon is a permanent immunity to petrification. So what would be the curse to that? I would probably say you are now cursed with a permanent vulnerability to petrification. Anytime you need to make a saving throw against petrification, you roll a disadvantage until you get that curse removed. That's probably how I would play that. So my player knows now that they're going to gamble on the dice to see if they can gain immunity or if they gain vulnerability. But I would probably not tell them what the DC is, because I would hate to see my player trying to read this tome and they notice that they're rolling really poorly and they don't know what the DC is, and so they don't finish it because they're afraid that they're going to get the curse. And so to prevent that kind of metagaming, I would probably not reveal what the DC was. I might not even reveal what the save is. I might just say roll a d20, and then I look up what their constitution modifier is and determine whether it works or doesn't. And then I keep track of that on my end to help prevent the metagaming. That's going to totally depend on who your players are and how good they are at not metagaming. So this is a good example of a greater tome. Let's take a look at a lesser tome. Written in Elvish, the barbarian's magnum opus of transubstantiation. This book's cover is bound in seaweed with no lettering. The book is in decent condition. Reading this book grants a temporary +1 to perception. This text requires 19 hours to complete in sessions no less than 2 hours at a time. This book can only be first opened within the walls of the City of Wisdom. So a couple things in here. First, you'll notice that it doesn't tell you how long the bonus to perception lasts. Myself as a DM, if I saw this and I saw that it took them 19 hours to complete it, I'd probably give them 19 days of bonus to their perception, just because that number's already there, and that seems like a reasonable reward for taking all the time to get the tome, because who knows where it was or how much they had to pay to get it, and then spending the time to understand it. You'll also notice that this one does not require any saving throws or ability checks. Lesser tomes are much less likely to need those kinds of things, whereas the greater tomes will. And then this last bit where it says, this book can only be first opened within the walls of the City of Wisdom. That means there's some kind of enchantment, right, on this book. And what is the City of Wisdom? I don't know. It's your world. What's the City of Wisdom? You tell me. You can totally ignore that too. If you read that and you're like, I don't know what the City of Wisdom is, especially if you're like playing a module or a pre-written campaign and you don't want to start tweaking with the world, you might look at that and go, whatever. I'm going to ignore that. And well, yeah, it's your world. Ignore that if you don't want it. Ignore any of this that you don't want. Tweak any of this. As with all of my generators, this is all just designed to reduce the creative energy to give your players interesting things. But if you look at this and you get a better idea, well then go with the better idea. That's the whole point of this generator, is to help you get cool things going without forcing you to take a bunch of time on the back end to make those cool things happen. Okay, with that being said, let's take a look at an open book event. So we're going to force open book event, and let's take a look at this lesser tome, Yika's Esoterica of Interplanar Mnemology. This book's cover is a mysterious hide material with black ink lettering. The book is severely burned. Reading this book grants a temporary +1 to Arcana. This text requires 24 hours to complete in sessions no less than 1 hour at a time, and it does require an ability check of DC 9. After the text is completed, if the reader has more successes than failures, they gain the positive effects, etc., etc. Now to the bottom for the open book effect. The first time a new person opens the book, the person is filled with renewed drive and energy. They receive inspiration. So this would be an example of a positive effect of an OBE, but there are negative ones and there are neutral ones as well. So that's a pretty good introduction to what the tomes are. And again, on the back half, in the second half of this video, when I show you customization, I will show you how you can tweak some of these things. Let's move on to the third section of this generator, which is the spell book, potential spells. You'll notice that we have cantrips and spells 1 through 9. This is where you select what level of spells are present inside of the book. So right now the settings say that we can have spells in this book up to level 4. And of course, you can change those just by ticking the boxes. You can have OBEs inside the spellbooks as well. If you want OBEs, leave that checked on, or you can uncheck it so there never will be. Allow just means that there's a percentage likelihood, not that there always will be. And then you can set the max number of spells that are in the book. So max means that there could be 6 spells, but that doesn't mean there will absolutely be 6 spells. It's a randomly generated number of spells up to 6. So let's change it to 4 and press generate. So this is written in Elvish, which means you might say that in order for the spellcaster who's using this book to gain knowledge from it, they might need to know Elvish. You can decide whether you want to do that or not. This is called Polaris's Journal Arcana. This book's cover is bound in dragonhide with no lettering. The book is in terrible condition. This text contains schematics for one spell, Silent Image. The first time a new person opens the book, they hear a menacing laugh from the ether, and they lose any inspiration if they had it. So that would be a negative OBE. How I might play this, by the way, this is a Polaris's Journal Arcana. There's only one spellbook in it. Well, the generator said it's in terrible condition. So I might say to my player, the book is in terrible condition. You can see it has burns and water damage and things are torn out, but in your studying of it, you do notice that there is one spell in there that you are able to make out and learn from, and it is Silent Image. So that's probably how I would play that. Just to give you another example, if we increase the max spells to 8, and you'll notice we've generated 6 in Gilbert's Books of Spells, Wall of Fire, Clairvoyant, Spirit Shroud, Maximilian's Earthen Grasp, Levitate, and Resilient Sphere. This book can only be first opened by tracing the cover's pattern with your finger. Some of these books will have interesting little puzzles attached to them that will require your players to become creative to open them. Again, just fun ways to make things a little more interesting for your players. And then, of course, if you leave all 3 books checked because maybe your players are going into a bookstore, a magical bookstore, and you just want to fill the shelves, then you check all 3, you click generate, and then you scroll down and you have 6 different books that you can tell your players they find on the shelves. Okay, so that's it for the book generator. Let's scroll over to the right and take a look at the spell scroll generator. The spell scroll generator is exactly what it says it is. It is a generator that helps you to generate spell scrolls that your players might find in a shop or in a dungeon. You set the level rarity of the scroll, and you set which spell list the spells come from. You select how many scrolls you would like to generate, and then just press generate. And there you go. You have now been given 5 spell scrolls with their save DCs and attack bonuses should they need them. It's just as simple as the language generator was. Tick the boxes that you want and press generate. So those are our 3 generators, but let's take a look at the storage systems that are present. There is no storage system for the language generator, but you do have a storage system available for the books and the spell scrolls. If you scroll down, there's the spell scroll storage system right there. And if you scroll down to the bottom of the books, then you have the library right here. And you'll notice it says you have this little plus button over here to expand. If you open that, then we have 6 sections right here that exactly mimic the 6 sections up here in the book generator. And so the idea being, if you wanted to populate a bookstore for your players, and so maybe you turn off potential spells and you just click generate, then you get these 6 results, but you want to be able to save these for future use, then you just drag and select those 6 cells, press copy, come down to the library, right click, paste special, values only, and now those 6 books are there in that stack there waiting for you. And you'll notice that it says shelf 1 has 0 openings because we have all 6 of these slots full. If I were to delete one of them, it says shelf 1 has 1 opening. If I delete another one, shelf 1 has 2 openings, and so forth. So I've given you 3 shelves. Here's shelf number 1, here's shelf number 2, here's shelf number 3. Places where you can store the books. And the reason you would want to do this is because the generator up here, all these 6 cells in the generator are dynamic cells, which means that they will reset themselves anytime anything changes anywhere else in the sheet. So we've got these 6 books here, right? Well, what if I want to generate a language over here? If I click generate, you'll notice that all of these books just changed. So changing anything anywhere else will lose the results, which means if you want to save these results, you have to put them somewhere else, which is why you go paste, special, values only. If you just do paste, just standard Control V paste, then it's not going to work the way you want it to, and your results will not be saved. So you want to right click, paste special, values only. You can come up here in the shelf and make notes to help you remember whose bookstore these books are coming out of or anything like that. And that's it. That's how the storage system works. It's very intuitive. If you understand how the storage system for the books works, you understand exactly how the storage system for the spell scroll works. You've got 3 stacks right here. If you wanted to generate a list, copy, right click, special, paste special, values only, and then you have 10 slots remaining out of the 15 potential. And that's how the storage system works. And that's it for the basic functionality of this generator. This isn't my only generator, by the way. I have dozens that I think you'll find interesting. This table shows all the generators that I've created and which of them at the time of publishing this video have video tutorials like this one. All of my random generators will have videos for them here soon. All of my random generators are available for download on buymeacoffee.com for just a couple bucks. Links are in the description below. If you're enjoying this video, now would be a great time to share it with other gamers. Please hit the like button and subscribe, it really helps me out. Let's go ahead and get into the back end of things here and talk about customization. It's customization that sets my random generators apart from all the others. If you're a widely experienced GM, this probably isn't your first random generator that you've ever toyed around with, but it will probably be your last. No other tool that you've used has allowed you to customize the code and the master lists so that you can personally craft your own spectrum of results. So that's what we're going to do now, is I'm going to show you how you can customize this generator to better produce the types of results that you want to use at your table. Every one of my generators has a reference tab. If you look down at the bottom of the screen, you'll see we have BSL ref. If you click on that tab, it takes you over here to where we have all of the engine pieces that makes the machine run. It's broken down into different sections, and some of it is minimized. You'll notice that we have these little plus boxes up here to expand. This section, column A, is for the rare tome details. So let's expand that. And this is where you can see the mechanics for how those sentences or paragraphs were formed. The blank, so what you want to put in this column are improper nouns and adjectives. So you'll notice I put in a long list of various proper nouns and adjectives that can go in here, and it's from this column, column B in this case, it's from this column that the names of the tomes are generated. So for example, if we come back here and generate a tome, the Punitive Parchments of Love. If we were to come down through this column, I'll bet we could find the word punitive. Yep, there it is right there. Number 137, punitive. So that was the one that was randomly selected in the results to start off the title of this tome. Currently, this list is about 171 long, but you can add to this list as far as your heart desires. You could go down to cells 10,000 if you wanted to. There's no limit to how many more things you could add to this list. You could also remove anything from this list that you don't want. So maybe you hate the word punitive and you want to get rid of that. You can just come to it and press delete. However, that's not the right way to do it. You don't want to leave any blanks in the middle of your lists. You can have blanks at the ends of your lists, that's just fine, but not in the middle. So what you would rather do is right click, delete cell, shift up. Now there's no blank and the word punitive is gone. Understanding this, understanding how to remove items from the middle of the lists that I've created, and that you can add as many items as you want to at the end of my lists. If you understand those two things, you already understand 65% of all of the customization that's available to you here on the back end of this generator. The so-and-sos, this is where you're going to put your proper nouns. So if we look back over here, we have Zook's tome, Zook. We're going to find his name in column C somewhere. His is going to be the so-and-so's name that's being produced. What word are we using for book? In this case over here, it was called tome. We could look through this list and find the word tome. Yep, it's right there. But it could also be librum, leaves, hymnal, esoterica, so forth. You have column E is the list of descriptors for that book. So the so-and-so's book of sacrifice or shamefulness. Let's see. In this case, if we look at number 1 right here, it's Zrawick's Archive of Erudition. If we were to come back here, we would find the word erudition somewhere in column E. To give you an idea of how many words I've already put in these columns for you, I'm just going to scroll down. The book descriptor column ends at about 460, and the so-and-so's proper nouns column goes down to 1234. So in other words, variety, variety, variety. You should never get the same book twice. Now, columns F and G over here are for what type of tome. Is it a lesser tome or a greater tome? So column F is for lesser tome descriptions, and you can see that we've got a bunch of different options in here, such as reading this book grants a permanent +1 to checks made with painter's supplies. And so what you would want to do is you would want to go through this list and decide if you feel like there's anything in here that is too powerful for a lesser tome, and you'd want to remove it. And if you had any other ideas, you could come in here and add as many ideas as you wanted to. Currently, it looks like the list is about 58 long. For greater tomes, it's the exact same idea. It looks like this list is about 40 long. Now here in columns H and I, we have our lesser tomes and our greater tomes time and comprehension requirements. If you want to change how much time is required for your players to read a tome and gain the benefits, you're going to do that up here in the formula section of this cell. So this is a function rand between 6 and 48, which basically just says it will always generate a number between 6 and 48. If we cycle the cell, watch this number right here where it says 48, 35, 25, 43, 25, 9. It's just randomly selecting a number between 6 and 48. And so if you want to change that range so that it's either taking more time or less time, you can increase or decrease the minimum, and you can increase and decrease the maximum. Just make sure that the maximum, the second number, is always larger than the minimum, which is the first number. If you understand that, then you understand the second half in here, which talks about how many hours are required per session. So this one is random between 1 and 2. So in other words, it will either always be 1 or 2 hour sessions. Again, this is a lesser tome. If we were to come down to the greater tomes, you would see that the session length is between 1 and 4 hours, and it requires anywhere between 48 and 124 hours of reading to complete. And then some of the greater tomes will also say, studying the text for longer than blank hours results in 1 level of exhaustion, and you can set what that number is too. Between 4 and 10 is what it is at default. You would want to make the same changes over here in column I as well, because we have the text requires hours to complete and the rand between for sessions at a time. But then column I also includes the DC range. The default is between 8 and 14 for the DC. You can change that, and then same thing with the greater. If you come down to the greater, you can change it. Currently the default is between 14 and 20. You will want to do that for every one of these 6 cells. You'll notice if I click each of these cells down here, they look identical up here, even though they look very different in the actual cell. That's because their formula is the same, they're just producing different results. And so you will want to go through and change those numbers in each of these 6 cells, and you'll do the same thing down here in the greater section as well. Scrolling to the right a little bit, we have a percentage table here, and this is where it determines whether the tome that is generated is a lesser or a greater tome if you have not forced one or the other. If you forced something through these 2 cells, then the percentages that we were just looking at won't matter. But if these are both off, meaning that nothing is being forced, then it will pull from these percentages right here. In other words, there is a 25% chance of a lesser tome, a 10% chance of a greater tome, and a 65% chance that it's neither. Or in other words, it's just going to be something that's a non-magical type tome, which would look something like this, where it says, the Everacre Codex of Comprehension gives you the book's description and how it can first be opened. But there's no magical element there for self-improvement or curses or anything like that. This is a neither example. You can change these percentages. Just make sure that they add up to 100%. The rest of these cells beneath this table, so all of this stuff down here, ignore this. This is all just part of the functionality. Scrolling to the right some more, we're getting into the appearances of the tomes, and these sections function exactly like over here with the title of the tomes. You've got your lists. You can add or remove to these lists however you see fit. We have our positive or neutral effects for the OBEs, the opening book effects. So these are your positive or neutral effects. These are your negative effects. Add or remove to these lists however you like. Opening the book requirements are listed here. So anything you want to add or remove from what is required to open this tome, you will do in that column right there, column R. If we come back to the generator, you'll notice that there is a setting here for forcing OBE. If force OBE is ticked on, then there will always be opening book effect. But if you turn it off, then it's more random, and the randomness of it is based upon this table here. P and N effects means positive or neutral, and so that's stuff in this column over here. Negative effects is this column, requirements is this column, and nothing, which means it's not going to take any of that. Just like with this table over here, just make sure that whatever these numbers are add up to 100%. Otherwise, you can change these percentages however you like. This is specific for the rare tome OBE generator. If you scroll down, you'll notice this is spellbook OBE generator. We come back here. Now we're talking about this section of the generator, the spellbooks, not the rare tomes. And again, you have your percentages. You can change those. And that's it for the rare tome generator, right here is your list of fictional titles. We currently have 260 in the list. You can add or remove to this list however you like. So to the right of that, we now have the author names, which we can expand to this section, and you'll see we have several columns for different languages, and the idea being that this will coincide with the language generator that was to the left of the book generator. And so if the book is written in Dwarvish, for example, then the author's name will be pulled from the Dwarvish name list. If this cell, where it says use language filter for author and title, if that's ticked off, then this will not be used. And you'll notice that up here in these pink cells, there's no names there anymore. But if we turn this on, then there are names there, and those are going to be the names that are generated over here. And so the idea with this is that these are the names that are used when certain books are written in certain languages. I will scroll down so you can see how long these lists are. Some of these lists are quite lengthy, one of them going all the way down to about 675. So you can add or remove names into that section, into those sections as much as you please. This next couple columns, AP and AQ, are for your spell books. So if we look back over here, you'll notice we've got the spell books, and this is Phoebe's For Mother. So we had the name, you'll notice For Mother is right here. We've got Ernatia's Journal Arcana. Journal Arcana is right here as well. And you'll also notice that some of these results will say Holden's For Revenge. And so every now and then you'll get the person's name and then a for so-and-so. And in this case, Revenge was the one that got generated there. And so the idea with this is it's kind of whoever this author was, what their notes were. It's almost like this spell book is a spellcaster's notebook, right? Where they wrote down their investigations and research into these spells. And so some of these are a little more personal, such as for my daughter or for big sister and that kind of stuff. So you can add or remove to these lists however you like. Here you have the master spell list where you have the spell level and the name of the spell. We have 299 of those. Add or remove to that list however you like. We have the spellbooks mechanics section right here. We can expand this, and there's a whole lot of stuff in here, but it's all machinery. There's nothing in here for you to edit or customize, so you can just ignore this section. And then the last section is the scroll mechanics. Expand that. We do have sections for each of the spellcaster classes and the available spells for each of those classes listed down. You can add or remove to these as you like. These three columns here are just for the functionality. You don't want to edit anything in these three columns. If you want to edit the spells that could be generated, then you will want to edit underneath their respective classes. And that's it for customization. So there you have it, the BSL generator, books, languages, and scrolls. Thank you very much for watching. Remember, I have dozens of other generators, so be sure to check them out here on YouTube or at buymeacoffee.com. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and happy gaming.